Could we have the mother of all index fund bubbles and crashes? So in this video, I'm going to talk about index funds and bubbles, and I'm going to talk about Mike Green's recent interviews and work on this topic. Now, before doing that, go over to adamfire.com, especially if you're an expat or a high net wealth individual, and see how I've helped people like yourself in the past. Now, Mike Green, who you can see if you do a Google search or YouTube search, he's done some work about index funds, and I'm going to summarize his arguments before I talk about whether you should be worried or not. So basically, Mike Green says, obviously, there's been a huge rise in passive investing. So passive investing is index funds and most ETFs. And with a lot of passive investing, there's no thought that goes behind the investment process. So for example, while some people might think about it a bit, like they might buy more if the markets are down, many people just automatically invest. And obviously that's a good thing to do for the majority of non-professional investors. I've talked about this before. You shouldn't time the market and all that kind of thing. And the average non-professional investor should mainly be in passive funds because by definition, most don't know where the next big opportunity is going to be, and most, if not 100%, can't time the market. So broad-based diversification makes sense for most people. However, what we've seen in recent times is many institutions like college endowment funds and so on also go into passive investing, even some structured products and professional products as well, and so on and so forth. So passive investing has gone from about 2% of the market to about 45-50% of the market if you include indirect and direct exposure to these kind of funds. So the issue is, if they keep getting bigger, they could become a majority of the market. So apparently most of the new money going into the markets is actually passive money. And in addition to that, in the US, apparently, with 401ks, there's auto investment. So before, if someone had a job and they had a 401k pension, the money would go to a cash account. But apparently now many 401k providers automatically invest you into a US passive fund, unless you decide not to go down that route. And obviously the path of least resistance means most people choose that route. So if more people have jobs, naturally, more people are going to buy the indexes. So from Mike Green's point of view, the warnings he's giving are A, the volatility we've seen in the last 10 years could get much more extreme, because if everyone's buying into the market, you're going to see much bigger rises and much bigger falls. So a lot of people assume it's just because of COVID or all those things, but there's been a lot of volatility the last 5 years, and he thinks that could continue. Number two, traditional valuation metrics won't matter as much. In other words, right now in the US, and the last few years, valuations have looked high compared to the global markets. And in addition to that, they've looked a little bit high, but not extraordinarily high compared to historical norms. He thinks there's a decent chance that because more people are automatically buying the market, that means that price to earnings ratio and CAPE ratio and so on, it will be normal that those ratios will go higher than in the past. He also thinks that it could lead to a situation where the big firms get bigger. So in much the same way that a few years ago, even before COVID, I made a video saying the FANG stocks could be some stocks to buy in the next year or two, because basically as more money goes into the US index funds and ETFs, that will naturally push big tech higher, because people are buying these big tech stocks without even knowing necessarily that they're buying these big tech stocks. So he thinks that could continue. So the historical overperformance for value stocks and small cap value might actually go into reverse, and the biggest firms could get bigger. And most strikingly, he thinks there's a chance in the future that we could see even much more volatile swings. So for example, let's say the Dow Jones goes from, 34,000 to 5 or 10 times higher, 340,000, or goes down 90% Great Depression levels for 10 years or something before eventually recovering. He thinks those much more extreme volatility events could happen more in the future. Now, is he right or is he wrong? Now, I personally think at the moment, and to be honest with you, I think even he thinks this, there's no danger at this time or the next, say, 5 or 10 years. So basically, right now, you'll see, say, for example, the big tech stocks. It's true they had a big run up and they did very well, as I predicted. but they've actually done worse in recent times. Big tech and big cap stocks, apart from oil and gas, have done worse in the last few years. That's number one. Number two, there has been no indication in the last few years that if one firm gets sold off, the whole market will get sold off. Or if one firm goes up, the whole market goes up. Because what a lot of people say about this so-called index fund bubble is eventually it could be the case that every firm on the index is always going up every day or always going down every day. In other words, there's no correlation, or there is a correlation between all the stocks going up and down, rather than the normal market mechanism where some stocks are up and some stocks are down. But that hasn't happened. I mean, look at last year, for example. The stock markets were down in most parts of the world, apart from the UK and one or two other places, because of oil and gas, in the case of the FTSE. But I mean, look at the US markets. Big tech was down by a lot, but oil and gas and some other industries were up. Or look at this year, the markets are up by quite a lot, about 10% so far this year in many countries, or more in the case of the Nasdaq. But some individual stocks and industries are down. So right now in the data, there's no indication that his predictions are being proven right. So I think this is more of a risk for like 15, 20, 30 years time. If we get to a situation where, for example, passive funds or index funds are 70% of the market, and we start to see stocks or the whole stock market going up and down at the same time, or we start to see absolutely massive volatility, that's when there'll be an indication that really he's being proven right. So basically, his summary is that individual investors are actually doing the right thing in many cases by buying passive funds. But because so many people are doing this, and especially so many institutions are doing this, this could lead to the mother of all bubbles long term. But I would say at this stage, don't worry about it at all. And actually, the funny thing is, not only is this something not to worry about, but the ironic thing is, and he even mentioned this in an interview himself, is even if his predictions prove right, this could actually increase your returns, albeit with more risk, because he's saying that if he's proven right, there could be massive swings and volatilities, and probably in the first instance, the markets will go up to levels you never imagined possible. So at the end of the day, it's not the worst possible prediction, basically. The markets could go up by much more than has historically been the case because of a lot of the automatic investing coming from 401ks and so on. So even if his predictions are proven right, his predictions actually aren't all doom and gloom. He's saying it could cause the mother of all bubbles, or like a permanently higher asset price base, even if that increases the chance of then a huge crash at the end of it. So personally, I wouldn't worry at this stage. I would keep an eye on it maybe in another 10 or 20 years if things keep going in this direction. I do think there's a place, especially for professional investors, to be active investors. Obviously, passive investing can't work if 100% of people are doing passive investing. So obviously, it is good to have professional traders and professional investors who go beyond the index funds as well.
Depends on every person's individual goals, how much money they want to invest, how long they want to invest. And I did not have at all the feeling from any bank with which I had contact with that they were interested in these things. Whereas with you, it was from the very beginning obvious to me that you had experience in these matters and also were interested in what I wanted to achieve.
Anyways, I'm very, very pleased and positive to say that I believe I've picked the right one. The results in the last couple of years have overreached my expectations by far. And I see no reason why it should not continue. Of course, I can highly recommend him as your financial advisor for now and for the future, because hesitating is missing out.
So I'm investing a lot in the Middle East market, but the amount of returns I'm getting from there is very low as per the amount of returns I'm getting from the investment portfolio which you made for me. Obviously, the best result in market right now is Adam.